explain it. There are just certain times I use the guys, get beautiful mailbox company. There are certain times that I just have you're coordinating a bunch of different things. And
usually what it is,
and you want to pull one out of the bomb and they use it. Well, then maybe, Chilton's can, I'm doing a lot of
New limitation implement down the man.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the March Cypresswood Community Association meeting to order. Mr. Secretary, will you please take the roll call?
Club Patio. It's wrong. Cypress Pond.
Here.
Eagle Pond Condos. Enclave.
Here.
Fairway Patio.
Here.
Garden Patio. Garden Patio. Golf Villas.
Here.
Greenfield Village.
Here.
Meadows.
Here.
Oak Grove.
Here.
Palmacia.
Here.
Plantations.
Here.
Sand Hill Lane.
Here.
Villas on the Green.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. I need, next slide, please, Savannah. I need a motion and a second to accept tonight's meeting agenda, please.
Make a motion.
Mr. Brett has made a motion. Mr. Shire is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Also need a motion to accept the January 18th meeting minutes into the record, please. Mr. Shire has made such a motion. Mr. Pemberton has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. We have one resident that wants to make a comment. Mr. Thompson, you've got 3 minutes.
Yes. Good evening. I have a few things that I wanted to mention. I think that one of the important items that I've noticed is the lack of transparency, and I think this is an excellent group to talk about transparency with. We have to get better with our transparency. We meaning each of the HOA presidents, the CCA board, and other people who are involved in major committees such as the amenity and the TAC committee. For instance, as a good example, just occurred today, on my way getting ready to come to this meeting, I found that one of the houses on my street is putting a new roof on. People had no idea that they had to get an architectural approval signed by the architectural committee before they started the roof. They just decided they needed a new roof, and they went ahead and contracted with someone to do it, and the roof is already now torn off, so they've got to put a new one on, no doubt. But that's just a point that I wanted to bring into this discussion. In addition to that roof, the fact that most of you should know that many roofs are being put on in Cypresswood by insurance companies, and the insurance companies are paying the bulk of the cost, sometimes all of it, sometimes everything but a deductible. So if you're not aware of that, look around. We have 50 homes in the Meadows, and probably now we're at about 20 homes with brand new roofs. And some of the other communities like yours, Bob, I understand has like 25 new roofs. So if you're not aware of it, become aware of it. If the roofs in your neighborhood are 15 to 18 years old. I think 18 goes back to about when you had 3 hurricanes come through here. I wasn't living here at the time. But those roofs are about ready to go anyway. And we have some people who come around, will inspect your roof, will find magically that there's wind damage, will report it to the county where they have magical contacts who will concur that there is wind damage. And then they'll get an inspector come in from an insurance company, and they don't have their own usually, especially out-of-town companies. They hire somebody from Polk County who will also agree there's wind damage. Then what happens? A $12,000 roof is paid for by the insurance company. How do I know this can happen? Happened to me. I didn't pay any deductible. That's negotiable. It wasn't with me. They wanted a $4,000 deductible. I paid $12,000 for my roof. I got $12,000 from the insurance company. Another subject that I want, and I'd be happy to talk to people, I don't want to go into the details of what happened with that roof, and 3 others within 100 feet of my house also have new roofs now that I coordinated getting. The other thing I wanted to touch on real quickly is traffic control. Traffic control is not really done the way I think you want it done. You've got to get involved with your community, how they feel about it, what they want. I'm currently writing a new manual for traffic control. Some of the things I'm putting in there may not be desirable, may be desirable, I don't know. But I'm trying to get a manual that really gives traffic control some kind of control for the community. We're not security and we're not in charge of safety, but we certainly can perform functions in traffic control that will enhance the living in our community. And I hope that you'll become aware, and a few things that I'm going to ask our attorney about before I proceed with all of the manual, but get involved with your community. That's part of that transparency. Thank you, Bob, for giving me the time.
Of course. Treasurers Committee, Mr. Tucker.
Please, may I sit down?
I told you not to sit.
I know.
You're next. We'll push on. We're having a few technical difficulties with the screen. Savannah is working diligently again, right in front of the church pew.
I'm sorry I was late, helping a friend. Couldn't control that. All right, so financial statements thus far for the year, I do not have them yet. It's tax season, and our CAM is quite busy, so I don't have any financials to report on.
He did say the next week or so.
When I get them, you'll get them. Okay? TAC Committee goal for 2021 is to bring a new format for presenting income and expense, thereby promote easier and more consistent understanding and grasp of what we need to properly support the Cypresswood community. Once our TAC committee has approved this presentation, we will ask the board to schedule a workshop to further develop board consensus and this reporting system. So, we're moving forward on that, and it will come, but then we'll call for your help. I'd like to inform the board that the Cypresswood Golf and Country Club, LLC, has paid in full its loan as of March 15th.
Hell yeah. Sorry, man.
Yeah, any questions? No answers. Thank you.
Landscape Committee, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Just a quick update. We had 3 days worth of tree work done on the boulevard. That is complete. And as you all, and one item on a new thing, as you know, the front sign had some serious damage. I think it was on January 31st. And we have been tracking for the past, as a matter of fact, this last weekend, I finally got the last quote in from the sign company as to what what's gonna happen. Basically, what we asked for was, what's it gonna take to put the sign back into condition before it was hit? And we have 3 quotes in the system, and one of them, and I can't verify this because I just got some numbers in later today, could be about $9,980, but it may go a little over that, may go about 10.5 to 11. I'll know tomorrow. The other numbers are coming in at $15,000. That includes electrical and landscaping. Another one came in at $14,000, and the same thing with that. So what we're dealing with here is the insured party has a property damage liability of $10,000. So what's going to happen is I'm going to send these numbers to the insurance company. They're going to write us a check for $10,000 because that's all that they can cover on that. It'd be up to us to make up the difference to get the sign back to where it was when it was hit. So we may have to look at some additional funds to be located. It might come out of landscape. I don't know where it could come from. It could come from if we have the insurance liability to take another $3,000 or $4,000 claim out of that. I don't know how that's going to work out yet because we don't have all the answers. But what I wanted to let you know is that we do have a $10,000 check coming, and that's going to go towards a replacement. One of the things I'm going to ask, and Mark has been very good working with me on the construction side of this. We have the quotes, but now I want to find out, and Mark will help me with the right questions, exactly what are you going to do to put the sign back in the condition that it was before it was hit. So we're going to be working on that over the next couple of weeks. One of the things that was mentioned, and this has been part of the amenities committee for the next couple of years, is the landscape committee has been charged with looking at a sign for the front. And one of my thoughts are, and I don't, this is just a thought on my part, and I'll just run it by you. Right now, with the costs that we're incurring with the amenities committees and the other things, we may want to just repair this sign and wait to see what happens when 542 is complete and what it looks like and how it's going to be evolved. We're not going to lose the sign. It's just going to be a lot closer to the entrance than it is right now. One of my concerns is, depending upon where that comes from, does that sign create a safety hazard for people turning into or leaving Cypresswood? It's one of the things that we have to evaluate. So what we may want to look at in the 2022 budget and the 2023 budget is for the landscape committee to recommend that we set aside some additional monies to hold until that sign, till we can evaluate what we want to do with that sign. But until then, I'm going to recommend that we just bring it back to where it was when when the accident occurred. So that will, and everything that we're talking about here, I'm going to make a recommendation to Bob, give him the copy of the quotes, so that you know everything that's going on at this point as to where we are with it. Any questions on where we are with that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Fred,
Bob, help me out here. I cannot hear what he's saying.
Oh.
I'm going to ask you a legal question. Right, Christopher? The guy that hit the sign, he's insured for $10,000. So we know who did it, right? Okay, so is there any way to go after him for the rest of the money? Christopher shaking his head no. Okay.
That's going to be a legal question, but the insurance company says, hey, he's got $10,000. That's the check you're going to get is $10,000. And I don't know what the legal options are at this point.
He just said no.
So we're going to have to leave it up to Chris to help us give us some guidance here as to what we can do. We have to look at our insurance package. There's a lot that has to be considered at this point. But right now, it's a good point. I don't know what we do beyond the 10,000. This is just a scenario, pull it out of the air. We take the $10,000 and let's say it's $14,000 and I find $4,000 in my landscape budget. Getting rid of another line item or something to take care of that. I don't know what we're going to do at this point.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, it's a good question because we need to explore what our options are.
I'd like to direct this to Chris. You shook your head when you said no. Is that we can't recover the other from the individual who did the damage?
Well, you can give it a shot. Oh, hi. Hi. You can always give it a shot, but here's the difficulty. The quotes I'm hearing, even the high-end quote, is $15,000. So the margin's about 5,000 bucks. If you go with your low bidder, it's only like about 1,000 bucks. How many dollars do you want to risk to win nickels? Because your average Florida defendant is pretty much judgment proof.
Well, is he a resident? Does he own property?
Doesn't matter.
Well, we
It's
can-
very difficult to collect a judgment in the state of Florida. Your homestead's exempt. If he earns wages, his wages are exempt, and his bank account, money in his bank account, fairly attributable wages, exempt. If he's self-employed, I can't garnish anything he's got. There's a 4th DCA decision about that because he's not considered an employee. So I can't garnish his stuff. You can only garnish wages and money off of employees. See how this goes? Now, if you get lucky, okay, you can always do an analysis on the guy because, well, once again, we got privacy laws these days, so calling up the bank and asking if Jim Jones has got a big old bank account, that's not very likely anymore. But in the event that you happen to find that one guy who's got a lot of money or has something to seize, we can talk about it. But I'm gonna tell you, I've been doing this for close to 30 years, and if I was just to flip the coin up in the air and tell you what's gonna happen, you've probably got a guy who does not have anything that's worth collecting, and you're gonna be risking dollars to win nickels. Because you're not gonna get your attorney's fees out of him. This is not an attorney's fee collectible case.
Well, I'd like to have that information, so, and I'll investigate it, okay? Would anyone mind if I do that?
I thought the low quote was $10,000. Why were you worrying about this, or you don't like the low quote?
I didn't understand the question, I'm sorry.
I said your low quote was $10,000. You don't like the low quote, or what? Why are we gonna spend more than $10,000?
We've got 3 quotes.
Yeah.
One's approaching 10, one's 14, one's 15,000. But the insurance coverage is only for $10,000. That's all the insurance companies.
I think Mark can answer that.
Yeah, the only thing we need to do is make sure we're comparing apples to apples on what exactly they're gonna do. I mean, because, you know, I mean, not only do you have the destruction of the visible part, we noticed on the opposite side there were some cracks within the concrete structure itself, and then some underground itself may be damaged. So we just need to make sure, you know, I mean, you wonder why would one quote come in at $5,000 less? That's 30% less.
Right.
Is he covering all the same thing as everyone else? So once we look at that, then he'll be able to answer that. Bob, questions?
Just, I guess just a couple of questions. Is the sign unsafe right now?
No.
Okay, well, I'm not done. So my question is, you already said that you don't know how far the road's going to impede on the sign that we have out there. So why are we even thinking about fixing it until we figure out exactly what we need to do? I mean, I know it doesn't look the greatest, but I think we're throwing $10,000 back to if we're going to redo a sign in a year or two anyway. I mean, again, if it isn't going to cause any damage or going to hurt anybody liability-wise, why not take that $10,000 and put it towards a new sign once you get the road done?
Okay, just to expand on the comments related to the insurance company paying $10,000 and his question asking, can we sue the person that caused the damage? What if the person didn't even have insurance? So that means, would that mean that we would be completely out as far as getting any collection? And we would have to pay, $10,000 or $15,000 right out of pocket.
Chris?
That's kind of speculative.
Yeah, right.
Man, you got to change this.
You want to answer that? I don't know
assumes a fact that we know actually isn't true. The guy actually has insurance. If you do wind up with the uninsured person, let me ask you a question. Now, since we're dealing with uninsured folks, let me ask you a question. Average uninsured person, think they have pots of gold hanging out somewhere? They haven't even bothered to meet the financial responsibility law. Okay, think about it.
There would be nothing to stop us from sending an invoice for the difference to that homeowner and hoping out of the graciousness of his heart, he would pay the bill to relieve the rest of us homeowners of that obligation. Is there, Chris?
No,
Yeah, okay, so we'll do. All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, just real quick, what the electricity is off at the sign, because with people walking around it, I wanted to make sure there was no possibility of injury. That's been turned off. We'd like to move forward with just getting the heavy pieces of concrete cleared out of there, along with just cleaning up what's left of the land on that one side, just cleaning that landscape out of there. So what I'd like to do is just have once that's done, if you would like, I can have the electrician come back out and then relight the signs for us so that we have lights in the evening. Right now, there's nothing. They've been off now for almost 90 days. So it's just something to think about. I'll find out what the costs are. They'll be minimum, but I'd like to at least have the lights back on so that the Cypresswood sign is lit up, the golf course, the restaurant sign is lit up in the evening. So I'll get back with you on that, let you know what we're going to do. Thanks, Bob.
Sure, thanks, Fred. Next slide, please, Savannah. It is traffic control, Mr. Reese.
Good evening. A couple things, and Christopher, I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
And let you think about it a little bit while I go over some other things, and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
It came up in our traffic control committee meeting earlier. We still have a number of residents that live here who refuse to put a decal on their vehicles, which means when they come through the gate after 10 p.m., there seems to be a lot of gnashing of teeth aimed at our staff because they don't want to show an ID to get in. So the question would be, are we able to refuse entry, or are we able to, since these people are, for lack of a better term, violating the policy that was adopted 3 years ago of furnishing a valid ID to get in, would we be permissible to contact the PCSO for possible trespass? So be thinking about that. One thing I'll bring up on a note that some of you may have already run into, I've been shopping around homeowners insurance, and the company that I've gone with has actually given a gated community discount. So just as a point of information, if any of you want to check with your agents, that is something that's out there. So I just bring that up because I'm a nice guy. I try to be. I will remind all of the presidents to remind all of your residents, the gate staff is not security. If you see someone speeding down your street in a golf cart, kicking down mailboxes, I would strongly suggest that you call the Polk County Sheriff's Office non-emergency line and report it. If you call the Gate Shack, they will probably tell you, here's the phone number for the non-emergency line for the Sheriff's Office that you need to call. Again, I've said it for the last 3 years that I've been VP, we are not security. We do not have the manpower to have someone leave their post at the gate and go try to chase someone that's speeding around the neighborhood in a golf cart or a car. Another item that came up, more after the 10 p.m. time frame, We've had people that come in that are residents, and they're acknowledged as such, and they tell the gate staff, the car right behind me is with me. And that's great, but that car behind them is also going to have their photo ID scanned by the system. Okay. One other thing, we have been asked, we being the traffic control staff, have been asked in the past to try to enforce temporary restraining orders. That's not us. There are a couple requests that hang on the wall up there. Those individuals are going to be contacted, that is not our duty or our job. And if you have an issue with that, contact the Sheriff's Department. It was brought up that nothing is, while we have an address and may or may not have a photo of someone that we're not supposed to let in. But if we have an address, the person that shows up may say, I'm going to Rick Reese's house. He's at 756 Canberra. And they never show up at my house, but they go to where they're not supposed to be. So it puts us in a situation that we don't need to be in charge of. So if you have any residents that you know of that have TROs in effect, you might advise them that we will be sending out written letters to them notifying them that we are no longer going to be playing that game. Chris, I've stalled long enough. It's to you.
Well, let's discuss the actual situation that your attendants have at the Traffic Control Center. You have an unknown individual who presents themselves at the Traffic Control Center, wants to come in, and refuses to identify themselves. That person doesn't need to come in. Point blank. It's an unknown person who refuses to identify themselves after they've been asked to identify themselves. They don't need to come into Cypresswood. You don't know who they are. You might think you know who they are, but you don't know who they are. You have no clue. And if they need the sheriff's office to help them either find their ID or figure out how to make a U-turn, I mean, that's up to the Traffic Control Center.
Okay. But in that regard, we would be within our rights to contact the Sheriff's Department and report a trespass.
Well, yeah, that's part of your policy, correct?
That is.
That wasn't the complete answer, Chris. What if that person shows their driver's license and they don't belong here?
Well, that wasn't.
That's not what was asked of him, John. That is a policy. That is a policy that has been set 3 years ago that this board voted on, that anyone that comes to the gate after the 10 o'clock magic number that has not been announced or called ahead is to be refused entry. Should that person show the driver's license but not be called in, they are refused entry. If they continue through the gate, that is an immediate trespass, and gate staff is to call the Sheriff's Department. Okay? If we get people that are friends, well, they forgot to call me in. Okay, well, you need to exit the neighborhood, call them on your phone, and have them call the gate shack so that we can have on our caller ID who is calling so that we can grant access. Okay? The only thing that might be, I heard 100% mentioned, should this community decide at some point in the future to spend the money to go to a proximity reader, which would get rid of the clickers that everybody in Winter Haven and beyond has, okay? If we elected to spend that money to do a proximity reader for the resident lane, that means that any resident that owns property here will be given, and I'm gonna call it a barcode, I've talked about this before, those can be tracked. The reader will track those, and it will show the time of day, day of week, everything, when that vehicle that has that code enters. That is okay for the resident lane. That will cut down on those that are not residents coming in at any hour they want and getting access to the community with a flicker. Okay? That still does not alleviate the issues that we're having in the non-resident lane. Okay? Anything else? Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Savannah. Road and drainage, Mr. Shira.
Good evening. My name's Bill Shira. I'm co-chair of the Road Drainage Committee. Here's the activity we've had since the last Community Association meeting. First on drainage, there have been multiple meetings with the contractors that are involved in the building of the wet well system and installation of the new electric pumps on the east side of the community. Those pumps are in production. The wet well system drawing, I believe, has been submitted for production or is just about to be. The production lead time on that piece, we don't have that yet. It should be about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 5. Thank you. We made a change in the wet well system. There were some aluminum piping that was going to be used. We have moved to concrete piping. We know that has a much longer life, and even though with the aluminum it's probably 40 years or something, or 50 years, we still know it has a fixed life. It doesn't equal that of concrete. In addition to that, our plans are to begin at the beginning of pretty much in about 3 to 4 weeks. We're probably going to start pumping down the drainage system on the east side of the community to get all the water out of there we can. That will help enhance the production. We've realigned the road base that we're going to build over to the canal wall. That road base will not be visible as a road. It is merely a strong base that will be under the turf of the fairway, and the fairway will look better than it does now. We'll have new grass installed on it that will be proper for that fairway. So that project's coming along as we would like it to. We have delayed repairs to the cart path at hole number 14 to make sure that we don't get, when we decommission the existing pump and we go to remove that, we're not anticipating issues that would cause us to use that, but if we rebuild that area, it totally closes it out for us for removal of the decommissioned items. We won't need it in the future for the pumps, but again, we're removing what is there. Moving on to roads. We're going to be resurfacing Cypresswood Boulevard from the four-way stop north. We have met with 4 individual HOAs, all of which interface with either Cypress Gardens Boulevard and a Clubhouse Road coming over to here. It appears all 4 of those associations are going to be moving forward. Congratulations to all of you. Your association looks its best when you got new roads in. And by all of this being done at one time, once we get into the quote process, which will start within 2 weeks, we'll get an idea as to what our pricing is going to come out to be. We're hoping that we've got a lot more volume than we initially thought, and we're hoping it's going to help us get a volume price break. That would be not only good for the Master Association, but it would be beneficial to each of those homeowners associations. Our next steps are to have all of these road services bid. That's kind of a lengthy process. We'll have 3 companies come out to do it. Each of the companies has to not only meet with us to go over the common areas, but meet with each of those individual homeowners associations. So for those of you who have not been around that, there's a lot of work that goes into it to do what you can to get it done properly. So that's a status update on where we are on those things. We'd like to think that we're going to one thing I didn't mention, the pump installation process should begin in mid-April, mid to late April, is that right, Mark? And the road resurfacing, we want to get through this bid process and get on the contractor's calendar as soon as possible. Certainly we'll want to have that done before we get to mid-June, and there's no reason to think that's not possible. And that's all I have. Dick?
Bill, I went down and looked at that situation. I'm back to the pumps, not the road. I'm back to the pumps. But I went and measured that, and if we go down towards the tee box on 14 and then straight down to the building that's down there, the shelter house or whatever is there that you go under when it's raining.
You mean back to the south?
Yes. No,
Yes.
no, would be going north.
No.
Well, actually east, I don't know.
Well, where the guy from the Mississippi State has the Bulldogs out there, that's where I'm talking about entering there. And that's about 65 yards, and then back to that building is about 300 yards, and to the pump is about 30, 40 yards.
That's correct.
And I'm wondering why, instead of doing the road, that we don't go that way, because that cart path is going to have to be redone anyway. And if we do that first, if we put the pumps in first and go that direction, we won't have to put that road in.
I think I understand that what you're asking is, why don't we come in through hole number 14 the way we have in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason that we don't want to do that, there's two things. One of them is those trees have grown, and the equipment they're bringing in virtually has a problem clearing that. Second thing is, we're going to further destroy that cart path area in there, and we want to redo that cart path area so it's good for the golf side of things. Well, the road that we're talking about adding is coming off of Greenfield Court, out on the course, and coming straight across to the new location that we're going to use. The reason we're going to move to the new location is it's going to be much less costly to service in the future, and Mark, I'd have to think it's actually less costly than trying to come in the
Well,
way
it is.
that
I mean,
Dick mentioned.
years ago when we originally put the pump in, we were using coming across 14, and at one point the pump was in, and a good portion of the cart path on 14 from Greenfield Road all the way around to the tees was redone. But then we had to bring equipment in a few years later because you had a problem with the pump, and lo and behold, they broke up the cart path because of their weight, even though we were putting plywood down to try to distribute the weight. So we've selected this new location for that reason, to get away from using the cart path, and there are a number of other things as well. We needed more space and a better work location for future servicing of the pumps. Plus, we now have a duplex 2-pump operation versus a single pump operation, and we're going to have a much larger concrete pad there than what's at the existing one. It's going to be large enough so that it will accommodate the 2 pumps, all the mechanical equipment, but then it'll have an extension on it as well, so at some point in the future, ideally we'd add a generator to that site. So then it would become completely self-sufficient. Okay? In addition, we want to move the power, and in talking with the power company, we have a pole right there where we need it. And we can,
It's just down.
yeah, we can just move the transformers from one location to the next instead of coming overhead, which has been a problem in the past, bringing it down the pole, underground, and up into the panel. So there's a whole bunch of reasons that we selected.
Won't
that
this
site.
close the 15 to 14 rather, green to 15's tee box? That's
Yes, it's going to close it for 3 days, I think.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, it's not going to be very many days, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I guess we're just going to play 9 holes at that. for
No,
those 3
there'll be
days.
there's going to be a workaround put in place.
You're still going to play all 18 holes. 15 will just be up by where the black tees are, or somewhere in that location.
Yeah, but how are you going to get there?
You're going to go back. We're going to have escorts. It'll be like going to go back 14, and all the way around. You're gonna have to, it's the only way you're gonna be able to get there.
For that period of time. There's just no, we've talked about trying to build a bridge across somewhere, whether we could fill in a corner and still accommodate traffic. We've looked at about 20 different things, and it just kept coming back to the same thing.
Is this gonna be tracked vehicles that are gonna go in there, or they're wheeled vehicles?
There'll be both. There'll be both track vehicles and wheeled vehicles.
Okay,
Now,
thanks.
one of the things that, when Mark mentioned the thing about the extended pad and the generator, by the time we've got both pumps and the extended pad for the generator, we've now taken up a whole lot of space where that pump system is now, and all of a sudden that whole little that now becomes confluent, or kind of conglomerated in there. By moving down toward the T's, we got a lot more space working toward the canal and up on the bank.
And we have to service the pumps. Now we're in a tight situation where to try to work on the pumps and continue having players come by is a bit of a hassle. If we move it down, it will facilitate making that easier in the future.
Okay, well, in other words, the pumps are gonna be past the black keys.
No.
Between the
Just,
red and the black
well,
keys. Between the red and the black keys.
yeah, between the red and the black tees. And the reason we selected that spot is, like I said, for a variety of reasons. Also, we gotta clear all of that Brazilian pepper and everything out of there, a lot of vegetation. As we move farther out, we start getting into big oak trees.
Right.
And
Well, there's 4
we
palm
move in
trees
those
out
oak
there.
trees and
There's four trees, good-sized trees, that are gonna be right in that direct route. Are we gonna have to take those trees down?
no, we don't have any
They're not
large
that
trees.
We're gonna go around those trees.
Yeah.
We're going to the
Left
east,
of the trees.
east.
Yeah, the pine trees. You're talking about the pine trees up by that
Oh,
gate.
yeah, the pine trees,
we-
yeah.
We got a couple of limbs to take off so to clear the booms and things.
Yeah,
but no,
that's all we're gonna
be
do
okay.
there.
Any other questions on all that?
Bill,
Yes,
I
Rick?
want to clarify, all of you that come from Dundee coming in have noticed we have what's called a 5-section head, should have a left turn arrow. It's not working. It was supposed to be installed. I contacted DOT. They have notified the construction inspection team, who is contacting Junior Davis, and they will be installing the detection for that left turn. Because right now, you have to wait till the light turns red for occasional break in traffic to turn left if you're coming from the east. So that should be remedied within the next week or so.
Thank you.
Next slide, please, Savannah. Amenities Committee, Dr. Palmer.
First, I have something to hand out. As was promised, sorry, Savannah, as was promised a couple of months back, the Amenities Committee did create, we talked about having workshops, and it was concluded maybe a booklet would help, something you could hold on to. This was created by the Amenities Committee. It is for all HOA presidents and vice presidents. Therefore, we make 28 copies, 14 times 2, plus 1 for the CCA president. If you have been serving on your HOA or the CCA for a long time, this may be all redundant for you. But this is designed for brand new presidents and vice presidents. Why just those two? Because they're the only ones that can represent an HOA at the CCA meetings. What this includes is a basic history of Cypresswood, a lot about our meeting process, our budget process, contact phone numbers, resident rules, examples of how dues work. There is also a sample letter in here. Now this is from mine. You can certainly use it or adapt it however you like. Some HOA presidents sent out somewhat regular letters to their owners. This is an example of one. It is, like I said, this whole thing is designed for information to be particularly helpful if you are a brand new HOA president and have no idea about what's going on. So we have two, and we'll hand these all out. Secondly, I want to make a comment about what Mr. Tassin said about the roofs. That does not apply to the Enclave, Villas on the Green, golf villas, or the condos. That is a very different situation. Okay? All right. Next slide.
Next slide, please.
All right. What you have here is a comparison of 2020 and 2021 financial data. Now, I want to say that Mr. Shira and a couple other people are working on new presentation. This is just to keep you up to date until that is done. This is not their presentation. It is just updating you for what we have right now. This is January and February. It is to give you an idea of the revenue and the expenses and the net. I think what is worth looking at is the revenue line for 2021. That revenue line is very close to 2020, and that's with COVID, which means that at least for this year, we did not, I'm not talking about all of last year, but for the beginning of this year, we did not lose as much as we thought we could have.
And Canadians.
Pardon?
And very few Canadians.
And very few Canadians, and probably about a third of our snowbirds. So if this is accurate, this may mean that we have, well, I take that back. This is accurate. What my conclusion may mean is that we may have a lot more locals playing. And so what typically happens is our revenue is really high the first 100 days of the year. That's when we make the money for the year here. We pick up a little more in November and December, but primarily it's January till Easter. And then we don't go down as you see sales in a normal company. We fall off a cliff and go straight down because everybody leaves. This may be different. It is simply too soon to say. But it is interesting that we have done as well as we have in January and February. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Did anybody have a question?
Brings up one other thing that we had not planned on and not programmed in was impacts from the construction.
True.
And this shows we have not had any impacts from the construction.
Yeah, when we initially 3 years ago found out about the road, we really expected to have a negative impact, and so far we're doing okay. If you can get in and out of here.
They're doing a good job out there.
Next slide. Okay. This is a summary of data for 2021, this year. As you see, that is the amenities assessment. That is the debt service. These should not be new numbers. This is what has been allocated so far for advertising, January through June. Yeah, those two, the second one and the third one equal the fourth line. That approved budget item has been approved for this year so far, just the first half of the year. You see our unallocated funds to date, and then the March operational support request. Next slide. Okay. Operational support items. What does that March support request involve? It involves repairs and maintenance to golf course and kitchen equipment. Yes, forever kitchen equipment. Fertilizer and herbicide. Utilities. Insurance. Clubhouse, pool supplies, some improvements over there. We have a new pool attendant. She started March 1st, around there. So, and the pool is being used every day. The weather's been great. And cart pass improvements. This was previously, part of that was approved, but this is for the March request. Hearing no questions, let's go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. So I'll give it to Bob.
The amenities group is asking for $33,000 of of operational support for those items. We need a motion to approve that, please. Mr. Brothers made such a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Pemberton? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed, Oak Grove? And Cypress Pond, okay? So that's 11 to 2. Thank you. Okay. Martha, are you done?
Yes, I'm
Next-
passing things out.
Next slide. Nope, too many.
Can't leave yet, I'm passing things out.
Yeah, don't let, if you didn't get it. Is there any new business to bring before the board? Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Brennan, did you have to come out? We'll do board members first. Mr. Holland, if you want to. New business.
Who's garden patio?
They're not here.
They're not here. Okay.
Hang on to that one.
Eagle Pond? Not here.
Nobody's here.
I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, this is not new business, but it's going to work into new business. The booklet that Martha has just been passing out, I have a comment on the first page of that, and that's regarding the representation, the representatives. You want me to move over? Okay. Representatives that we represent our HOA. Therefore, we must be in constant contact with them to find out what they want. This outline here, to me, I interpret that to mean that we're a dictatorship as far as the president is concerned, because we're not to ask those people what they want. Okay, that's enough to say on something like that. I'd like to make a motion, but before I do, I think it's necessary to explain the reason for the motion. I've heard many, many comments over the years since I've been here, and I've been here for 13 years, about the Cypresswood regarding the high cost and needs of various projects. I have also heard comments about kickbacks. Hold on, I'm not finished. And that family members get jobs without estimates. Personally, I don't think that that's going on here, but it's a possibility. Next page. Now my motion. I make a motion that we have at least 3 detailed estimates, not just the amount of money, but a detailed estimates. And for any expenditure over $5,000, all the estimates must be posted on the the Cypresswood Community Association website and sent to the presidents at least 7 days before they're brought for a vote. That's my motion.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a second. Are there any questions on the motion?
Yeah,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Shire.
I would like to know how, when we're dealing with emergencies and drainage, how we can get bids out and wait 7 days for a response.
Okay, so that's a question. It doesn't necessarily need an answer. It's a statement more than the question is there, who else, Martha had a statement? Or a question?
I have a question. My question is, I thought that we as presidents did receive information prior to voting on something. The implication is that we are presented with something without 3 quotes and we have to vote on it, and I always get stuff early, so I'm a little confused.
I think it depends on the circumstances of what we're trying to ask for, and I think what he's asking for is that information to be brought forth sooner so that it can be reviewed by whomever needs to review it before they cast a vote. I don't know, Mark, you first, and then Tom?
Yeah. Yeah, in situations where the work is easily definable and quantifiable, then it's easy for us to solicit free bids. For instance, we're going to do this road work, we're going to undertake this road work. Okay, well, you know, you can't just say, well, there's so many yards and we want it milled up and we want it laid down again, because every little association has some differences. So we have to walk through the details of every one of those. Bill and I met with the 4 representatives from each of those, and all of them have different issues within their own group, and so we need to, you know, he and I sat down and have talked about that. Okay, we're gonna identify the association, we're gonna identify the roads that belong to that association, we're gonna identify all the individual issues that they brought up. Now, some of these issues are fixable, and some of these issues really are not fixable. Some folks understand that better than others. Some we talk to and they look at us and assume you can magically make this happen, and others are more understanding about the limitations of what the work can accomplish. But those are pretty easy to get bids on, and we do solicit free bids for those. On repair work for drainage, if we know we have a large drainage project coming up that's well definable, then we can get bids. That's not a problem. But the majority of the time, we're dealing with repair work. A good illustration was last year, Tom called me up and said, hey, we got a problem on Canberra. Went up to Canberra, and there's a big hole in the middle of the road. We put out cones to try to, you know, to see exactly, to redirect traffic around it, and then take a look at what all's involved. You can't even bid that work, because until they start doing the excavation, we don't even know exactly what the cause of it was. Whether it was a pipe failure, a joint failure, whether there's something else that's been damaged as a result of other utility work that's been done in that area. There is no way to get a quote on that kind of work. It's just not possible. So I'm not exactly sure what we're trying to accomplish here by a motion such as that. Anytime we can get quotes on well-defined work, we can do that. But I'm not, as Bill said, I'm not sure how we would approach this type of repair work. Even a large project repair work, getting someone to quote the work and schedule it is not always doable. And I don't think you folks really, the thing that you don't really get is how much time it takes. Oh, get 3 quotes.